are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me as always, Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm reeling a little bit UFC 300 last night, but I'll talk about that a little bit at the end of the show. In the meantime, we got a lot of Flyers ahead of us. As we're diving into it, make sure to follow us on social media at YWT Podcast. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Find us everywhere you find your podcasts, including sportstalkphilly.com. Diving right into it. So a week ago, Kevin, we were sitting here talking about this Flyers team. They had lost, 7 in a row? They had lost seven in a row.
7 at the time, yes.
Things were really bad. John Tortorella, here we are. And then they come out Tuesday and get just absolutely dumpstered by the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah.
Yet, as we sit here, the headline still remains that the Flyers are alive in the playoff race. I don't know how. No one else in the East wants it, apparently. We've watched Detroit crumble down the stretch. We watched Pittsburgh surge a little bit, but 3 weeks ago, it looked like they were dead in the water. The New Jersey Devils hung around for a while. They're kind of tailing away. The Buffalo Sabres kind of tailing away. Well, there's still a couple teams involved.
I'm going to cut you off with those two because they're done.
I know that. I know. That's what I'm saying.
By this point, New Jersey and Buffalo they've been eliminated for a couple days.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
It's a 4-team race for one spot, basically.
The teams that remain, it's as we sit here Sunday morning, because again, this is all subject to change by the time you listen to the show. Sunday games will have happened.
The good news about what you're saying is that nobody who we're going to talk about plays. None of them play. There's 4 games.
Relevant games. Yeah. Right. For us. So as it sits here right now, the New York Islanders still hold the 3rd spot in the Metro. Kind of looking like they're going to kind of sit there.
They have big time driver's seat right now.
Right. Exactly. They are where the Flyers were a month and a half ago.
With a margin now too.
Yes. And it looks like they're going to hold on to that spot. It looks like they're going to squeak in. The real race is kind of for the wild card. And it's a 4-team race. Pittsburgh's still hanging around. So it's Washington, Detroit, the Flyers, and Pittsburgh. Washington, Detroit, and Pittsburgh have all only played 80 games where the Flyers have played 81. Washington, Detroit have 87. Pittsburgh has 86. The Flyers also have 87. So you're not really in a good spot because you got 1 game left. Every other team has 4 shots or, a chance at 4 points. You only have a chance at 2 more. Kevin, break it down for me. What do we got here?
I can't believe we're talking about this.
I mean, so are you saying you can't believe it from like the preseason perspective where we thought they were going to be bad? Or are you saying this from like the 60 game perspective where we thought they were definitely going to make it? Or are you talking about this from like the 78 perspective where they have thrown it away?
I'm saying I can't believe that we're still talking about this after the way things looked 4 days ago.
Okay. Because this
is even still a possibility.
Yeah, this season has been an absolute roller coaster.
Well, because so we did the show last Sunday, right after the absolutely abysmal loss in Columbus.
We were both already eulogizing the season,
right? And for me, that was the start of it because then I went on OMB Puckcast this week. We recorded that on Wednesday. That was the day after the Montreal, after total embarrassment in Montreal. So somehow, and I did the same thing. Not only did I do the same thing after Tuesday, I wrote an article that basically was like, well, this is the way it's going to go or whatever. And it's literally asking, was all of this worth it? Because now this is what it looks like. You're at 7 at that point. What was it? They were at 79 games. So you're going into game 80 on that Thursday. 3 games left, looking like it's over.
Looking like you're getting ready to start.
Well, and honestly, it wasn't even looking like it's over. Like, okay, I know mathematically they're still alive. It was, how do you watch a team lose to Columbus 6-2 and then Montreal 9-3 and say, but the last 3 games still matter?
Yep.
I actually went on the air on, I forget whether it was Wednesday or Thursday. I went on the air one of the 2 days, and it was probably Thursday, and basically presented it, not either that or maybe it was even before. It could have even been before the Montreal game, to be honest. Presented in like a way where I'm like, these 3 things happen. They're out as of Thursday night.
Yep.
Like, pretty much assuming, like, I went into that Montreal game thinking I wasn't thinking 9-3, but I was thinking loss.
Well, and that's the difference, right? Is like we can accept losses. These were not just losses. These were embarrassing.
Last 2 weren't,
drubbings. And like two bad teams that are not playing for anything.
Right.
They were real pride-sucking games, I'll be honest with you. It was tough to watch and be a Flyers fan for those games because they just looked that bad.
Right. Yeah, it was sure it was. And like, and the thing is that in that moment when you're watching the Montreal game, you're thinking, and I'm going to get to this part later because certainly the part I'm going to get to later with that stuff is what the last two games, regardless of how this finishes, mean, because some of your questions I think got answered. That was the biggest thing I took away from the Montreal game was not only does it look like they're now like not going to make it because that was pretty much your last chance to try to get something back on the rails before everything from there on out was must win. It was already close to must win, but here's the crazy part is that as it's played out, it might not have been right. But at the time you didn't know that it was pretty much win and get this thing figured out, or you're not going to make it if you don't go 4-0 from here.
And even sitting here, that win, those 2 points would have been real nice.
Well, it sure would have. And I go back as far as I was on the air the day after the Islander game. They lost in overtime. They got the point with 10 seconds left.
Yep.
And I get asked, how big is the point? And it's huge because that 1 point could put them in, but the point that they didn't get could keep them out. And that's very true right now.
And that's
how close this is. And like for them, the thing that like, and this is the thing too, like I come back to, so they get embarrassed in Montreal, and I did basically at that point, I did 2 shows in the same week, ours and then OMB, with the same vibe, with the same kind of conversation and putting it to bed. We're not going to talk about this anymore. We're not even really going to scoreboard watch because, we might do this for a night. Right. No, but we might do this for a night to just get the official, like, oh, it's over kind of thing. But I genuinely thought prior to the Ranger game with the way because here's the thing, the Montreal game turned into the Columbus game in the sense that after the Columbus game, you're going, did they have a shot against Montreal? They already lost to them once and they just got the doors blown off them in Columbus. They're probably losing. And then you don't even think it's going to be that bad. You go 9-3 where you go, well, now surely they're not beating the Rangers, right?
They're done. Right. And they looked cooked too, is the thing. Like
they
didn't look like a team that had the capability of bouncing back and beating the Rangers.
And then you start watching the Ranger game and you're like, of course this is how it's gonna go. Because now they're gonna beat the Rangers when it doesn't matter as much. And then what happens as they're beating the Rangers though? Thursday starts to play out and Buffalo beats Washington, and you're like, okay, that's interesting. The Pittsburgh-Detroit game going overtime didn't help you because both teams got points, but I guess in a way, like the team that got 2 is the better team to get to. It's still opened the door more. And the Islanders ended up winning in overtime, but the Islanders were playing the Canadiens, and it was kind of like, okay, listen, you can't expect every team, like you got help with Washington losing to Buffalo. It's like, okay, every team is playing a lousy team this year. Can't be expected to lose all the time. And the Islanders, in fairness, have like hit their stride now and are going to probably make it.
They're looking like a problem heading into the playoffs. I don't want to be Carolina right now.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's going to be an interesting. It's going to be an interesting series. If
that series is going to be nasty and defensive.
I mean, you can't write that one in stone yet because it's there's still ways for everybody. The Flyers can't get to third, but everybody else can.
If it looks like if they end up there and Carolina plays the Islanders, that might be 7 overtime 1-0 games. That series is going to be, man. The old school hockey men are going to love that one. Whew.
Yeah, I hear you. It is pretty. It is getting pretty crazy that we're down to a certain point with this, that nothing is determined in this East playoff at all. We don't know who the number 1 team is. We don't know who the number 2 is. We have a pretty good idea of what the 2-3 in the Atlantic is probably going to be, but you can't even say for certain there. Same thing with the 2-3 in the Metro, but you can't say for certain there.
We were chatting about it a little bit before the show. The West is pretty much done.
The West not only has all 8 teams in, but they have a playoff matchup determined already.
Right.
There's one that we know.
Yeah.
So at this point, all that's really left is the shuffling of a couple of things.
God, I kind of hope Vegas gets a couple of points and ends up playing Edmonton in the first round because, oh my God, I want that series.
That would
give me Vegas Edmonton in the first round.
If that happens, it would totally change my answer for who wins, like who moves on to some extent. It would change my predictions.
And on that note here, if you're listening, we will be back at some point with a playoff preview show. We haven't really nailed down a specific date yet. We might do it Friday before the playoffs start. We might do it Sunday.
I think what we want to do is
figure that out.
Honestly, I think what we want to do is see the schedule.
Yes. Well, and a big part of that is whether the Flyers make it, right?
Sure.
Because I mean,
so and here's something. Well, here's something interesting. I actually didn't tell you this off the air, so I'm telling you for the first time now, I guess. I almost I almost suggested to you, let's just do that. Like if we were looking for a time to do the show, I almost suggested let's just do it Saturday after the game if they're out. This way we're not looking at trying to do a Sunday morning thing. But once there was clearly a scenario. No, but once there was clearly a scenario where it was like, oh, well, now we got to watch and see what happens with the game that starts at 8. Well, forget that. Right. You know, we want to pay. We don't want to sit there and be doing that part live. You know, there were too many things up in the air at, post game. Right. To do it. Because there was nothing really going on. I mean, they had a Snyder Hockey Pro-Am game come in that was like, which lined up with, I don't really have a tab for this, but we'll footnote it right now, I guess, with Wayne Simmons retiring.
Yeah. God, officially. I love the Flyers media team. We'll talk about that Devils game in a second. Do we want to talk about this Rangers game first?
I still want to talk about how they're still alive first.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because seriously, so okay, based on all of the other stuff I mentioned going into Thursday, I guess I seriously didn't expect that basically for half the show, for like the next 30 minutes, we're gonna sit here and Dumb and Dumber quote up the screen with, that half the show is, so you're saying there's a chance. Yeah, I am saying there's a chance. In fact, it's a chance that's so easy to define. Since we're down to the wire at this point, that you have most of, if not all of the information you need right in front of you.
Right. There's so few games left that the math is pretty easy.
So let me start with this, because this is actually an interesting place to start with it. It has nothing. It does. Well, it does have to do with the Flyers, obviously, but a couple of days ago, like we just mentioned, the Islanders are really in the driver's seat for third place. They've got pretty much everything in front of them. In fact, I think all they need to do at this point, maybe not quite. I don't think that if they get 1 point, they're solidified yet. But if they get a point, even just 1 point in the last 2 games, and Pittsburgh loses a point somewhere, they get third.
Okay.
Because Pittsburgh and I think, well, no, it might depend. It might depend on if Detroit can hold that tiebreaker there too, because Detroit has a lot in front. Here's where that's actually a good place to then start the part where that matters. Yeah. Detroit's actually in the driver's seat here.
Okay.
Because they can win out in any fashion and top out at 91 points. So if Washington loses to the Flyers in any fashion, even if they win against Boston in regulation, if Washington loses and loses just even 1 point, they top out at 90. Okay. The Flyers can only top out at 89. And Pittsburgh can only top out at 90.
Okay.
So considering that Detroit plays back-to-back games against Montreal, while Washington's got Boston and Philly, it's a totally different animal.
Right. Well, the good news is we have seen, Flyers have seen as of very recently, right, the Montreal Canadiens are still playing for pride. You're still out there grinding. You're still gunning. And quite frankly, I don't know. That might work out for the Flyers, because you look at it and you go, okay, well, you have a team that's not making the playoffs that might as well just let it all hang out there because they're bad anyway, and they're a young team, and they're all evaluating to kind of see what they have and be part of the rebuild and all that stuff. And they're putting it to the wall. And then, your other teams are playing Boston and the Rangers, who are in already, have their spots pretty locked up. Obviously, it's not 100%. Right. But if would you be surprised if, Boston's resting people?
Not for the next game, because they're not locked into the one spot. Okay.
That's fair.
As long as there's something that they have to play for, I can't dismiss it.
And of course, this does all go without saying. As far as the Flyers go, none of this is relevant if you don't beat Washington on Tuesday night.
Well, can I throw an interesting? Yeah. Well, sure. It's not that's the place to start. All right. I'll just continue there then, because that was the next thing I had written down. Was the Flyers obviously need a win?
Right.
Here's some of the interesting parts. It's going to have to be in regulation if Washington wins against Boston. If not, even getting 1 point, for even Washington getting a point, I should say, would give the Flyers all tiebreakers with a win.
Okay.
That's how simple it is for the Flyers to be in control. Boston wins the game in any fashion against Washington on Monday. The Flyers just need to win. to take care of Washington.
At least Washington.
Right. To take care of Washington. Well,
Montreal has to take care of Detroit.
At least once. And this is how close this one was, by the way, is that so Detroit played Toronto on Saturday. Toronto had a power play with a minute 51 left, I think it was, or with 2 minutes left, or it was close. It was something like that, right? And not only did they have a power play with that kind of amount of time left, they had Austin Matthews out there on the cusp of 70. Literally,
how many do you have now?
69.
Nice.
Yeah, I knew you wanted to get that in there. But on the cusp of 70 on the cusp of 70 in their final home game of the regular season, everybody in the building wanted it. Right?
But the Leafs are the Leafs.
Well, so hold on. Even if they come back in overtime and don't score on that power play, but win it in overtime,
take away the regulation win.
Right. Even that 1 point means Detroit just has to lose a game.
Yep.
Don't even care how it is. They just need to lose one time.
Well, and based on how they've played over the last 6 weeks, it seems like they'll find a way to lose.
Well,
yeah.
The one, and this is the only thing I'm going to mention about Montreal, because we don't need to talk about Montreal a ton, obviously, but the one piece of good news I will give you is that now that the college stuff is over, Lane Hudson signed. So they're probably getting Lane Hudson for these games.
Yeah.
And there's a possibility. They said that, well, this was last night, I guess. So I guess it's sometime on Sunday. They find out if Luke Tuck plays too.
Ooh.
Or signs, or at least signs. Whether he plays or not, to be determined. But I don't
either
think
way, there'll be some big juice in that room.
They could be adding 2 potential pieces of their future. Yep. In addition to the fact that I've seen Nick Suzuki look really good lately, Cole Caulfield's looked good lately. You know, they've got some stuff working for them.
Sure. And you have a chance to be spoiler to a division rival. And that can't go understated, right? If the Flyers had their last 2 games against, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Columbus Blue Jackets would be gunning for those 2 games because it's a division rival and you have the opportunity to keep them out of the playoffs.
And if Detroit's going to get in, I'm going to tell you right now, if Detroit's going to get in, it's going to be behind the guys who know what they're trying to go into, or at least have a sense of it. Dylan Larkin scored the game.
A monster.
Well, Dylan Larkin scored the game winner. You think that guy doesn't want to put Detroit in the playoffs again? You think that, Patrick Kane doesn't want to play in the playoffs again? You think that Alex DeBrincat doesn't want a taste of the playoffs again? Like,
I really want Dylan Larkin to make the playoffs so that he has to grow out more than just that stupid little goatee. You know exactly.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I want to see that man with actual facial hair. Come on, Dylan.
So, all right. So that's the situation there. Pittsburgh is interesting because Pittsburgh, they play on Monday.
Yep.
And let's put it this way. They could really use the win there for their playoff hopes because they will need at minimum 89 points to make the playoffs. The fact that they don't play again until Wednesday after that is massive because it allows for all of this to play out in front of them. Meaning,
God, we're going to be watching that game on Wednesday night sweating, aren't we? Oh no.
Possibly.
Oh
well, no. Here's the thing. This is why it matters. If they don't get so much as a point on Monday against Nashville, they're out. There's no mathematical possibility for them to get 89 points. And if Detroit gets no points on Monday, that would top them out at 89 and eliminate them because of tiebreakers between both Washington and Philly. So
that Tuesday could be a win and in.
Right. So basically, regulation lost Pittsburgh, regulation lost Detroit, and it's Flyers Capitals, win and you're in. And that's also if Washington gets no point. If Washington gets no points, by the way, it's winning in, and the Flyers don't have to. It turns into 2010 all over again. The Flyers can get in even with a shootout win.
I was gonna say, Kevin, what team have I been comparing this team to basically since November?
Yeah, I know.
Come on, man. Come on, man.
And please don't start making parallels. The goalie who wears number 33 is starting in goal on Tuesday. We got that already. By the way, this never
unusual.
Happened.
Yeah, John Tortorella.
We know the goalie for Tuesday.
Yep. And he did it in such John Tortorella fashion too.
He's got one more.
He got a question about, Sam Ersson playing 50 games when he was originally penciled in for 18 to 22 and blah blah blah, and John Tortorella goes, well, he's got at least one more. So
we're gonna talk about him specifically when we go to the 2 games that they won, obviously, because obviously those were big for him, but I also want to talk about his usage because I kind of went back and started to look at some stuff with that and some of the numbers and things like that and how crazy it is, how much he's been used over the last certain portion of the season. Last half, obviously, but
by the way, if the Flyers do make the playoffs, who's it most likely that they'll play?
Probably the Rangers.
Okay. Who was the coach of that 2010 team?
The Rangers 2010 team, you mean? Yeah.
No. The Flyers.
Yeah. Well, so it's both. They beat John Tortorella's Rangers to get in.
A little swap from 10 years. Come on. The swap from 15 years ago.
Right. I mean,
give it to me.
So hold on, just pump the brakes for a second because it's looking most likely like it would be the Rangers.
Of course, it could be the Bruins. There's a chance it's Carolina still.
Right. There's a way for it to. There's still a way for it to be Carolina or Boston. It looks like.
But man, if you get the Rangers, if you get the Tortorella Laviolette bench swap, oh my goodness, I will live for it.
I will say for what it's worth. And detailing this is probably better for if they make it and next week and all that. But sure. Those teams played 4 really, I mean, maybe not the first one. The first one was still a little shaky from a Flyers perspective. Right. But the last 3 games that those teams have played have been pretty evened out, or at the very least, you've seen a scenario where it's like, hey, the Flyers can hang in a series.
Yeah.
Yep. It's actually kind of cool that's the potential matchup that stands out the most, I guess, or that is the most likely because they played each other 3 times in the last month and a half.
Well, and we had some feistiness on Thursday. Like, if we want to go into that game a little bit, we can start breaking that game down. But
we can get into it. So, because that's there's not really much more to say. No. Obviously, Tuesday's a must-win, and wouldn't it be interesting if it came down to you go into that day and Now, I do want to put the caveat on one other thing about the playoff race because if Pittsburgh gets a point in any fashion on Monday, then it means the Wednesday game matters for something.
Right.
Then it means that regardless of if the Flyers win and have that,
it's not a true win and in on Tuesday.
Right. They would have to still watch and see what happens. And I believe at that point, if Pittsburgh loses and even gets a point on Monday, it's still got to be a win.
Yes.
Because they need 3. They need to get to 89.
Because they need to pass. Right.
Right. Now, what you also hold out the possibility for is that, like I said, if Detroit loses in regulation, they're out too because they would lose tiebreakers. They lose, believe it or not. So Detroit actually loses the easiest tiebreaker of them all, which is regulation wins. It's the very first one. The Washington one, if the 2 teams tie, you actually possibly, as far as I know, have to go through the layers of they would be potentially tied in regulation wins, regulation and overtime wins, total wins, and it would come down to head-to-head, which the Flyers would literally win by winning the game.
Wow. Crazy. The more you set it up like this, the more it feels like 2010.
With all the odds. Yeah, I know.
That was a win and in game. If the Rangers had won that game, they would have gotten in.
Sure.
Like it was down to this.
By the way, for just so people. So let's spin it even further than with the Capital side of things, really quick. Just for example, I said it could come down to like head-to-head points. If that's the case, I'll do you one better. If the Flyers have to win that game in overtime or shootout, so Washington gets a point, the 2 teams may tie in regulation wins, regulation overtime wins, total wins, and points against the opponent for head-to-head, and it would then come down to, I'm not kidding, goal differential, which the Flyers,
my God,
which by the way, both teams are not close in terms of being on the plus side of this number. They are both heavy in the negative.
The Flyers were plus for a very long time until the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, and then they decided to lose games 7-0 to Tampa, 6-2 to Columbus, 5-1 to Chicago, 9-3. You realize that if you add like all of those up, it's pretty much the whole differential. Like makes it up.
You weren't just losing games; you were getting
the doors blown off of you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whereas Washington's minus 40, that is earned. That is hard earned through the whole season.
Pretty much. Well, because Washington at this point either wins close games or loses by a bunch. And there's almost no
loses by 3 or 4. Yep.
Which means this game's going to a shootout.
By the way, Alexander Ovechkin has turned it up. I know we talked about it a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but
what did I tell you then, though? I told you it then. I said if they're going to make it, he's going to drag them into it. He's gonna drag him into the playoffs, kicking and screaming. And actually, I can't even say that completely because it's like he's the one leading the train, and then had Dylan Strome and Sonny Milano jump on and be like, "Yeah, by the way, we're here too. We're on this train too."
Yep. And then don't forget that John Carlson can.
I will throw John
every once in a while.
Yeah, I'll throw John Carlson in too because
what a goal.
Because nothing says like more than them winning the game that they did on Saturday
night. Yeah.
Well, already down Rasmus Sandin, then going down Nick Jensen, who has to get stretchered off the ice at the end of the first period.
Crazy.
Right. So the point where they're not only are they worried about one of their teammates, obviously, so your brain can go a bunch of different directions, but they're down their top defenseman already, and then down another one to be playing with 5.
Yeah. Absolute insanity.
And they still won against a team that is clear cut making it, like against a team like Tampa.
Oh yeah,
pretty solid.
Washington wants to get in real bad, and like this game on Tuesday is going to be a lot of fun.
Sure, and then not to mention, like when you're watching the other ones, it's going to be with Pittsburgh, it's been Crosby's been doing the whole thing and saying, "Follow me, I'm the leader here."
Man,
and
if it was any other year, Sidney Crosby would probably be your heart favorite at this point. And he's not, because Austin Matthews is about to score.
He's not even in the top 3.
Right. And Connor McDavid is about to put up 100 assists. And also, by the way, Nikita Kucherov is about to put up 100 assists.
McDavid's going to put up 100 assists if he plays.
I think both things will be true. I think he'll play to get his 100th assist.
He might down the stretch because they still have 3 games left. I didn't realize they actually had that many to go.
And I think at least one of them were at home, right?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, you got to let them try.
I mean, the race is fascinating anyway between the other 2 that are involved, because McKinnon and Kucherov are just
the best player on their team, and it's not close.
Right, and what they're doing is insane. And then
I think Kucherov has like a 40-point lead on any teammate, like something crazy like that. Like it's absurd.
Yeah, it's not quite as big for McKinnon to Mikko Rantanen, but still big, but not that big. And McDavid's got
big.
Yeah, okay. And McDavid's got Draisaitl, so we know how that goes. But you're right. And then to throw in a potential 70 goal scorer as well.
Right. Nikita Kucherov, by the way, has 141 points. His next closest teammate is Braden Point with 89. Nikita Kucherov has 52 extra points.
Can I throw one more?
My good God, he's a mutant.
Can I throw one more thing in about that race, by the way, to cap it off, by the way? So Crosby doesn't even rank top 4. Based off of all that, like you said, right? Like practically willing his team to the playoffs, and he doesn't even rank top 4.
People are putting up historical statistical numbers.
Right. Well, and not only that, but I'm like, here's the thing. So we just went through, okay, there's the top 3 that are really running away with the scoring race that have been battling back and forth for a while, right? Yep. Crosby or Matthews is probably going to score 70. He's got 2 games left to get 1 more goal, and he scored in, what is it now?
That's
eight straight.
That's another situation where I think Austin Matthews is more likely to sit the last 2 than Connor McDavid is.
I think they will play him to try to get 70.
I don't know. Do they have a back-to-back in Florida on the road? Florida, and then their first round series is going to be in Florida. Do you want to put him up against the Panthers 4 days before the playoffs when you don't need to?
I don't think it's like that.
I probably don't.
Yeah, but okay, so here's the thing. I think that I hear where you're coming from. If they would have won against Detroit and he gets 70, then it's not even a conversation.
I agree. No, you bench him.
Because 70's on the table, I think that there's a way where they could let him be in the game and then say, okay,
I don't think you're wrong.
It's everybody else. Like, this is where Tavares sits and this is where Marner sits, and you go out and play, and the next game will reverse it. So that you're still playing who's on your roster, but you get some guys out. Like, I can see that happening. By the way, so in all this, Crosby's like 5th while practically dragging his team into the playoffs potentially. Yep. And we have not mentioned.
And if they make it, he'll get votes.
Oh, he definitely will. He already will. He already will.
He'll get top 3 votes for sure.
Right. He already will, whether they do or don't, to be honest.
That's true.
But through all of this, we didn't even mention Artemi Panarin with 118 points.
Right. Because
no mention.
Yep, because he hasn't scored almost 70. He hasn't put up almost 100 assists. He hasn't single-handedly dragged his team to the playoffs.
He hasn't, but the dude's too shy of 50 goals. Like,
no, and that's amazing.
Like crazy numbers for a season, but
but this year that's just not good enough.
Yeah, I guess so.
He's probably 6th or 7th. Like,
right.
it's in heart voting. Like, it's insane.
It's crazy. All right.
This
anyway,
is the craziest statistical year. This is the craziest statistical year we've ever seen. By the way, I just wanted to talk about the McDavid and Kucherov 100 assist thing for just a second.
Yeah.
In case you're not aware, only 3 players in NHL history have done that. Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Bobby Orr. End of list.
With 100 assists in a single season.
What?
Yep.
Pardon? And like Gretzky did it 11 times or whatever, but that's
right.
Whatever.
And Kucherov Kucherov is 2 away and McDavid's 1 away, right?
Yeah. And like at least one of them is going to get it, probably both of them.
McDavid's only hinges on whether or not he plays. Let's this way. McDavid's missed what, 2 or 3 games in a row?
Something like that.
Right? So missing 2 or 3 games in a row in this race puts you 11 behind the lead, but he was right there at one point. All 3 of them were like 128 a week ago, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's
insane.
After the start of the season,
right, and I tried to sit there and say that like about mid-season. I looked and I went, I know he's like 20 points back. He's gonna be up there by the end.
Watch out. Yeah.
Well, now it's out of reach, probably.
Well, once they fired Jay Woodcroft, and to be fair, I don't think it was really Jay Woodcroft's fault. They didn't get a single save with him behind the bench. But after they've made the coaching switch, Connor McDavid has been. So there's Connor McDavid next level. Somehow he's even gone a step beyond.
Right.
I don't know how this man has 9 gears, but he's got 9 gears and he's in 9th right now.
Right. I don't want to do too much with these guys because they're all making the playoffs, so we might as well talk about them next week.
Yeah, and we'll do a playoff preview.
Because let's put it this way: you just brought up a point about Edmonton's goaltending early in the year that made me think of another team that's going to be in the playoff conversation that I'm telling you right now, I already know. No,
because man, Freddie Anderson looks good.
Oh, I would know. Okay, I'm not talking about stable goaltending then.
Okay.
It's somebody who's got goaltending questions that I think makes a big difference when it comes to the playoffs. We'll get there though.
Okay, yeah.
It's a future thing. It has nothing to do with the Flyers and the playoff race.
Okay, so it'll probably be on our next show.
Let's talk about the wins.
So we've been alluding a lot to that Thursday game against the New York Rangers, but let's actually break it down a little bit. So
sure.
How was the mood in Madison Square Garden? It seemed like they were pretty party ready. And you come in and 4 minutes into the game, let's go Cam York. Nice. It's a good start.
There's something about when you score early that tells you what kind of game it's going to be. I even said with the Montreal game, you're going to know a lot of what you need to know in the first 10 minutes, and they got scored on a minute 5 in. And even though they kind of calmed that through almost the first half of the game, really, like 1-0 through almost the first half of the game is 1-0 through almost the first half of the game. You're right there.
Right.
But there was just something that didn't feel right about that Montreal game, even like after the fact, like, oh, they're coming back a little bit, but something still doesn't like feel right.
Something's off. Yeah.
Or whatever. And then boy, did it take a turn once they gave up the second one, after that. Yeah. I'm kind of like, I'm not specifically talking for me. A couple of the things I have in my notes are not to specifically talk about the Ranger game or over the Devil game per se. They finally got some goals. I'll say that specifically about the Ranger game. They finally got some goals.
They did get a little goal scoring. Yep.
And really, I'm glad you brought up the York goal first, not just because it was the first one, but because I think it sets the stage for a couple of the others too. They got the scoring off the rush back that really wasn't there for a while. Like,
yes,
Cam York's a trailer on that play. Okay, good. You find a guy coming in off, late on the play, but he's got some room to shoot. That works. Eventually, later on, Travis Konechny scores a goal that's off the rush, and you could make the case that in the same way, Bobby Brinks, even though it was a deflection off the player, off of the Ranger that was in front. I think it was Keandre Miller who was the Ranger who was there. Yeah. Everybody thought it was Ryan Paling's goal at the start. By the way, so Ryan Paling's had 2 goals, I think, that people thought were his that turned out not to be. One of the goals, and
he's been in high danger areas. But it looks like he's impacting plays.
So what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is I think, and I'm gonna go check this just to be sure. Yeah, so one of the goals, it was totally like garbage time. Nobody was paying attention with 3 minutes left in that Montreal game, but Eric Johnson scored. And I'm not saying that to laugh at him. He's by the way, great guy in the room, great interview.
Yeah, it seems like he's been a solid presence.
By the way, so he's a guy who's played in some, as far as I'm concerned, played in some decent hockey markets, playing, all those years in Colorado and then playing in Buffalo for the last little while. Like Buffalo still has their market. I know the team has been in rough shape for years, and like everybody's waiting for the playoffs again and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they still care.
Of course.
Woman of care there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He opened the door last night to come in and do post game and goes, "Whoa, a lot of people." So literally the first question, Kevin Kurz asked the first question to him and goes, "So big game, huh?" And it's and like it kind of did set the stage for it or whatever. Like, yeah, but
it was a big game, yeah.
Yeah, but he's a really good interview, really good guy. Hard to not like him, like the person there, like great person. Definitely on the back nine of his career, obviously, maybe back three, honestly. But I think he knows that, to be honest. But like,
yes,
great, but really awesome guy. So again, everybody thought that second goal in the Ranger game was Paling's, because go to the net, it tips. You think it's his. He actually, to his credit on the replay, he actually turns and immediately points to Brink and is like, "Nope, like nice. That's you." By the way, it's little college hockey footnote thrown in during this part of it. It felt like right around that timing that somebody told Bobby Brink that Denver was going to the national championship game.
Yes,
because all of a sudden the energy ramped up and he was noticeable for the rest of the night.
Yep, he scored his 11th of the season with that one there, and
he had the legs. By the way, he didn't score in it, but he had the legs in the Jersey game too. He looked really good in the Jersey game.
Absolutely, and Bobby Brink is one of those guys. If you do end up making the playoffs here, I think Bobby Brink can contribute out of your bottom six,
sure,
like in a playoff series, and that is the kind of production you're gonna need if you have any aspirations of making a run, taking a shot, beating a team.
Well, for right now, yes, but like I told you last week what I think one of his biggest keys is. If he gets stronger,
sure,
like, he's got the skills. It's not like he's a non-skill player. He can do some things creatively.
Yeah,
I think he's just too small still.
Sure,
and as a rookie, that's to be expected. But I think he's too small to make an impact on things. And it's interesting because how we quantify a guy who's basically, rookies and all that stuff like that, because Tyson Forrester's a rookie too, but those little handful of games he got, I think sparked something in him, because
I absolutely agree.
He did it again. He made a play in the Jersey game where it looks like he should be pickpocketed. He almost is going 1-on-2 and he still wins the battle. And it stands out to me. It stands out that, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I give him all the credit in the world for the 20 goals and having a season like that offensively. He really came on offensively in the second half to show that he's got the chops, but he's really had that two-way ability and that physicality of winning battles all year long. And it's what makes him a player. It's what makes me so confident about his future compared to some others.
I agree with you. And I'm very excited to see what he does with another NHL offseason.
Do you know what? And the only it's not where I'm fearful, but this is something where I pump the brakes a little bit with him. Is I'm really excited for him. I think he's got a great future, and I think he's got the foundational tools now that he's
got the shot, man.
Right. Well, and now that he's stronger, I think that all goes hand in hand. Like, it's clear he's stronger on the puck. Like, sometimes that's half the battle. Like, that you can. That means you can be something defensively, and then bring the shot into play.
I think there's a really good chance your first power play unit next year has Tippett and Forrester on it.
It should, and it better be deployed in a different way.
Oh, well, yeah, of course.
Because what they do, I'm saying what they do, their structure of it doesn't even work. There's no movement, and the structure's not good. So that's why it is what it is. I mean, it's actually a good point to bring into it, because before they even got on the board in the Jersey game, they have a chance to. That first period is kind of like your typical first period between these two teams. There's not a lot happening, very low event first period. And then the two penalties happen, and you're looking at a minute 13 at 5-on-3 going, this is the
opportunity.
Well, it's not just that this is the opportunity. I should mention, when it's a low event game like that, the crowd's not really into it yet.
Yeah.
And that got them into it. Like, that was
like,
it's bubbling. Yeah. It's ready. Like, we're getting there.
And they were bowing within about 15 seconds.
It just can't continue that way. And there's nothing you're going to do about it for the rest of this year. It's just, you know what I mean?
Oh no, of course you're there now,
but that's like, here's the caveat I'm putting on Forrester, by the way, is that for as great as his rookie year has been, and for as much as he's done to take steps and all stuff like that, I just really, like, I just hope that we're not excited for him the way we all were after Joel Farabee got 20 early on. And it's like, okay, you're one big, you're one thing away, and that's the way people think. I get it. But I really think that he can be a player down the stretch. And we did think a lot of that with Farabee too. I think Farabee just needs more work in the offseason. I think he needs to be stronger even further than he is. He's still not strong enough.
I think Joel Farabee has gotten absolutely his development has gotten absolutely derailed by COVID.
Probably, but you can't sit on that anymore.
It is absolutely not an excuse, but he was part of that team as kind of the young, precocious rookie. He was kind of the Tyson Forrester of that 2019-20 COVID season team. And since then, he's kind of stagnated a little bit. He hasn't, I don't know if he's not doing the off-season work. I don't know if this is just kind of his ceiling. But Joel Farabee has settled into just being kind of a good player, where I think we all kind of looked at him and thought he might be a great player.
Well, and here's something interesting too. What was it? It's been 3 years since Forrester made his debut in a pro level too, because that whole season after he got drafted, they didn't play juniors, so he basically played with the Phantoms. And yet, if you would have told somebody this is the only way you're going to develop is there's no other league for you, so you're going to have to play pro. You actually don't look half bad playing pro as an 18-year-old. Okay, it's still going to take you 3 years before you're actually solidified at the NHL level. That's just a development process.
I was going to say that for a guy who's not a top 5 pick, that is a typical development process where you play a couple of years in the A, you get your feet under you as a professional, as an adult, honestly, because for a lot of these guys, they've never really lived on their own. So this is you being an adult, you living on your own, learning how to cook and learning how to manage an apartment and be an adult and a professional hockey player all at the same time.
Right.
And then we take the next step and, okay, now you're in the NHL.
Right. Now, all right, so I kind of want to jump off of the rookie talk for a second, or some of the younger players and things like that. Do semi-big picture. I'm going to mention some individuals out of this, but I do want to do semi-big picture for what these 2 wins are good for, even if they don't make it. Because the reason why I even wrote something that was kind of asking, was it all worth it, was because A, it looks like you're not going to make the playoffs. B, it looks like you're going to finish somewhere now in the 13 to 15 range with your pick. So if you don't make it, so it's great, what happens now? And so you're asking yourself, was it all worth it or whatever? And
I think I know what you're going to say.
Well, my answer was originally yes, because of the fact that you're going to get answers about things, or at least if you still have questions about certain things, kind of how to somewhat solve some of them. You don't have enough talent. So, you still need to gain talent in some way, and you're going to have to get creative to do it if you're going to be picking in the mid portion of the first round.
Sure.
Even twice, it doesn't matter. You're still going to have to figure it out and get creative with it. You may be getting answers to players who don't belong here or whatever. That's part of the equation. But I also think that what you had also was something that you could table for, you had to, to me, you had to table the goaltending thing to next season. Sam Harrison played more than you wanted him to. He faded down the stretch. Does it mean he can't start? I don't think it doesn't mean he can't start. And I'm doing this, by the way, after the Montreal game.
Right. I was going to say, well, that's actually what I was going to say about these 2 games getting into is I think one of your major takeaways is that Sam Harrison is a good NHL goalie.
Yeah, so I do want to focus on that, and I'll so first of all, I would say he just played 2 of his best games he's played in weeks in the last 2.
He played really good on Thursday. He played spectacular on Saturday.
Saturday, the interesting thing is that so Thursday he had to be good because it wasn't changing the fact that when you're playing the Rangers, and they finished with 25 shots, but the Rangers had 23 going to the third. This was not some easygoing game for Sam Harrison to give up 1 goal while they were at a 5-on-3, by the way.
Yeah.
And then face all the other shots, with regularity. He had a pretty busy first 2 periods, and then that they went full shutdown mode in the third period.
Well, and I think these were 2 huge games for his confidence.
They were. So the thing with the thing with Saturday was that's so low event for him that sometimes the saves have to be really big. He definitely made his share. I think you're taking it from he had to make 5 or 6 great saves to 2 or 3.
Yeah,
but he still made them.
But the difference between Thursday and Saturday was that on Saturday he had to make all of them. You don't have the wiggle room. Like, you have to make all of them, or you don't. You might not win the game.
Yeah, it's true. And
that I think is the difference. And I think for Sam Erson's confidence, I think he played really well for the first 30 or 40 games where he was dependent on being the starter. And then he looked tired for a couple of weeks and had no help because you couldn't play Felix Sandstrom, you couldn't play Cal Peterson, and Fedotov wasn't over here yet.
Right.
And since he's gotten a little bit of a break, I think the biggest lesson we've learned, even if the Flyers don't make the playoffs, kind of projecting towards next season.
Right.
I think we have seen enough from Sam Ersson that he can be a starter / tandem guy in the NHL.
So I'm going to get into his numbers in a second. First of all, by the way, this is how hockey's really a funny game sometimes. I watched him during the first period on Saturday and I thought he doesn't look like he's solid. I'm not kidding. I'm like, I feel like he's a little shaky right now. They're firing a lot. They're trying to pick corners on him, missing the net barely. But he looks shaky trying to get where he wants to go, and that doesn't bode well. And then from the second period on, way better. And believe it, and you know what? Really,
I'm going to attribute that to the funky start time.
Maybe, but also, you know what? I'm going to tell you exactly where I also feel like I noticed it turned a little too. As soon as they got the lead. As soon as he had a lead and it wasn't, we're in a deadlocked nothing game.
Because if you're him,
don't give up the first one.
Well, other than the Rangers game on Thursday, this team has hung you out to dry for the last, 2 or 3 weeks.
And it's also don't give up the first one and put yourself in that position to be chasing again. So when they didn't give up the first one, and it's shorthanded no less.
And I was going to say, by the way, that goal shorthanded, Travis Konechny off a gorgeous feed from Scott Lawton.
I'm going to rewind the play a little further, though. Give Nick Seeler a ton of credit for recognizing that that's where they were going and finding a way to get it up ice.
Incredible breakout pass.
Because if he doesn't dive to push that puck ahead, they probably get scored on there.
Oh, absolutely.
But I want to say, speaking of Travis Konechny, I do want to say something about him before I get back to the Ersson point, because he's the closest thing that they've got and have had in a long time to a guy who, when he gets a breakaway like that, you actually feel the confidence, like he's scoring here. He went down on that breakaway, and I'm like, this looks like the spot where he's gonna do what he does. He picks a spot and he's gonna fire it away.
Do you remember the feeling of watching Mike Richards bear down on a goalie all alone on the penalty kill?
Are you just saying this because the last time a player had 6 shorthanded goals in a single season for the Flyers, it was Mike Richards?
I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that. I did not know that stat. Yeah. Man, and I'm just saying, who was the captain of that 2010 team?
Yeah, I know. Here we go.
There's your comparison, man.
Well,
Travis Konechny is Mike Richards. Travis Konechny is Mike Richards.
Well, he's not the captain of this team.
I know, but
you know what?
A lot of
in fairness, John Tortorella said after the game he knows he's a leader.
I think there's a real chance if the Flyers hadn't been coerced into naming a captain, and yes, I do think that is what happened. If the Flyers hadn't been coerced into naming a captain for that Stadium Series game, I think it would have ended up on Travis Konechny's chest.
Maybe, I don't know. Depends on who.
And of course, hindsight's 2020, and John Tortorella is never going to tell us that. So,
depends on who is. It also depends on who is going to be here. If you went that far, like obviously,
you don't think Travis Konechny is going to be here?
No. The Lawton conversation was part of it too, because
that's true. That's true.
I genuinely think that if it came down to it, like Lawton was probably still more of a logical choice ahead of Konechny, and it's not taking anything away from Konechny.
No, of course not. I get where you're coming from.
It's if you're trying to figure out who you think has the biggest grasp on that room, then I think you still put Lawton ahead of Konechny. When it comes down to it, if he's still here, obviously is the point. Like, and he was when they did it, but
every once in a while I have to pinch myself and remind myself that Kevin Hayes and Tony DeAngelo aren't in that locker room anymore, and it just makes me so happy.
By the way, and this is a complete footnote, and I'm not staying on it, but I did catch this. Did you notice that Kevin Hayes has been a healthy scratch for the Blues for a couple games in a row, or 2 or 3, or something like
Tony
that?
Tony DeAngelo has been a healthy scratch like half the season with Carolina.
Well, that one's not as surprising.
No, I know.
I think that people know he's not as good of a player as the other 6 they could throw out there.
Hayes being a healthy scratch is more significant.
Especially when all year he played, and now it's we got to scratch him.
Crunch time, right? They were in the playoff race until 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they were
2 or 3 days ago they were still alive.
Well, I mean, they were legitimately thought they had a chance at making the playoffs.
Well, no, but like 2 or 3 days ago, 2 or 3 days ago, it was if Vegas loses in regulation and the Blues win, they're within a point.
Yeah, but I think Vegas had like 2 games in hand still.
They would have had one, I think.
It's one of those situations where like you still.
No, I know, but I'm saying there were still scenarios being floated.
By the way,
and he wasn't playing.
Mark Stone in a practice jersey.
I know. We're not talking about that right now. I know where everybody wants to go.
I love it. Here's my thing. It's in the rules.
I know.
Your team can do it too. And if they're not doing it, then get a GM who's more creative. I don't know what to tell you. I love what Vegas is doing. I am not one of these, it's in the rules.
I hear you.
You don't like it, you do it too. Be better at it than them.
I said that going back to when Tampa was doing it with what they did with Kucherov the one year.
Yeah. And he shows up wearing the $100 million t-shirt or whatever it was.
Anyway, all right. I don't want to stay too long on other teams because I want to stick to a couple people on this first of all, before we get out of here because we are getting close to a wrap.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll stay with the Ersson thing since we were there anyway or whatever because these 2 games were really important for him. It shows he can do this. He can play in crunch time. He can play the starter portion. I think he has a lot of work to do to be able to handle the kind of workload for good that they tried to throw on him this year. Like, it's definitely not something I recommend. And it's just his rookie season. So I don't want to shoulder him with too much and be like over the top about what he can and can't handle. But if you watched him down the stretch and think the guy who was so good in December and January and into February just isn't good enough anymore, I think you're not giving him a fair shot.
I agree.
Like here, you know who else didn't have great numbers early in his career and then won Vezina trophies, plural?
Okay.
Sergei Bobrovsky.
Yeah, no kidding.
You want to complain about how
what kind of stupid team gave up on him early, huh?
Well, I was gonna say, it's a legit question. You want to complain about how the Flyers don't have Sam Ersson for the next 10 years, like people have done with Bobrovsky? Then go ahead and run him right out the door. But for me, he's the starter next season. And I find if a better balance, gives him a better chance. If he's played 50 games this year. Like that's what he's up to. If he plays 50 next year and does it with better balance, does he have better numbers over the course of 50, generally speaking?
100%.
Like think about this. Saturday's game was number 50 for him. He started 48 of the 50. He's going to start Tuesday, as you would expect. So it's going to be 51 games, 49 starts. And everyone thinks that where things really changed is when Carter Hart went on leave at the end of January. I don't think that's really it.
Okay.
So in October, Ersson played 2 games. That was it. Just 2.
About on schedule, honestly.
Right. Well, we're going to stay there because in November, he played in 6. I believe one of them was a relief appearance.
Okay.
So through November, he's up to 8 total games played. And of the 6 in November, 1, like I said, probably I believe was in relief.
Okay.
And 4 of his starts were part of back-to-backs where you naturally insert the backup goalie.
Right.
So and figure this, his only non-back-to-back game that he started in November was the San Jose loss, where you're thinking, sure, play the guy who's the backup. That's also a natural place to throw him in.
Yep.
So we get to December. In December, he actually made 5 starts in a row prior to the final game before the holiday break. Now, that was because at the time...
Carter Hart hurt?
Ill.
Oh, right. Yeah, I bet he was.
Well, regardless, that's another story. But then after the holiday break, he started 2 more. Actually, exited his first start in Vancouver because of dehydration. But in December alone, he doubled his appearance total from 8 to 16.
And that's where the workload really.
Well, so through November, he had played in 8 of 23 games that the team had played. Even with a busier December, he played in 16 of 36. And it was aided by Carter Hart getting sick and going through that prior to when he took leave.
Yep.
Ersson then appeared in 4 games in January before January 20th. So now we're up to, at that point, 20 games played in 45. At that pace, he might have finished with 35 total. In the final 37 games, and I'm lumping in Tuesday that hasn't been played.
Was it like 32 of them?
31.
Okay, pretty close.
That he's appeared in.
Okay, and I think 30 starts then?
I'll get to the start numbers.
Okay.
Or maybe I don't get into the start numbers. Actually, it doesn't matter. He's just playing
29 or 30 starts either way.
Well, I'm pretty sure that anytime he's appeared, since then he's appeared and started.
Okay. Because you were in a situation where when you were putting your backups in, you couldn't put Sam Ersson in because you were putting your backup in to give him some rest.
Pretty much.
Cal Peterson got left out to dry. Felix Sandstrom got left out to dry because that's just what they had to do.
It's not even that, because it honestly comes down to, remember, so only one of Ivan Fedotov's 3 appearances so far has been a start.
Was a start, right?
The other 2 were in relief. Felix Sandstrom got 3 starts. Cal Peterson got 2. So from 20 of 45 to 31 of 37. But since December 12th, which was the first of the 5 starts in a row with Hart still on the roster anyway, Ersson will have played in 41 of the final 55 games.
And we talked about Tyson Forrester bulking up a little bit over the offseason. We talked about Bobby Brink bulking up a little bit over the offseason. And I don't necessarily know if Sam Ersson has to bulk up.
It's not that. I think it's just don't roll him out there like he's,
but his body's he probably has to do a little bit of work on his body because he wasn't anticipating to play 50 plus games.
He's a hard worker anyway, though. So
of course, and I'm not implying otherwise.
Well, and I think he battled as much as he could through the later portion when it's like, listen, you're still trying to find that gear. And
I wonder if he trains a little bit differently this summer, thinking he might have to play a bigger chunk of games.
John Tortorella gave a really good answer regarding Ersson's usage, because he talked about, I would do it again. Like it was what we had, the situation called for it, and I would do it again. And all. I just think it was important for him to win a couple of games down the stretch, so people didn't see him go in and not only just win a couple games, but win 2 games where you make 24 of 25 saves in one, and then stop all 20 you face in the other, and it actually looks like, hey, this guy actually doesn't have a save percentage that's under 900 all the time. He had a couple of games here against 2 pretty talented. I'll say talented teams, because New Jersey obviously has slipped a little bit, and New Jersey and the Devils were without Jack Hughes at this point and all that. We get that, but the Rangers were legit playing.
Oh yeah, that was
at least from a roster standpoint they were.
Other than playing their backup goalie, right? Because you didn't see Shesterkin, you did see Quick. Other than that, they had their full roster ready to go in that game.
It's not like Quick's been bad though either. So you know what I mean? That's the thing.
Quick's been great.
I mean, it's pretty crazy how he totally overplayed the Konechny goal. I mean, really out of position on that one. But otherwise, I get he's still been really good. The other thing then, so this is the bigger picture thing for you. This is off the goalie for a second, and I'm going to hold for the Washington game on Tuesday that we don't know about yet, because I want to see what kind of team comes out. Look, there should be no lack of motivation if it's winning.
Ooh, no kidding.
But if you've got it, if you know that there's and maybe this will help, honestly, if you know that there's something else that's got to happen in addition to
some scoreboard watching to be doing.
Whether it's Wednesday and Pittsburgh's game matters, or whether it's you still need Detroit to lose in some fashion, that's going to be going on at the same time.
Yeah.
Maybe you play looser and you actually still take care of your portion despite all of that. I don't know. But the last 2 games at the very least help answer a couple of questions that were soaring around the interwebs and whatnot after the last handful of games. Did John Tortorella lose the room? Did the team quit on John Tortorella? Thank goodness I shouldn't have to answer those questions all summer.
The answers to those are obviously not.
Because if the team quit, or if the coach lost the room, or whatever,
you don't beat the Rangers.
Would you be seeing a 4-1 win over the Rangers?
Nope.
And a team that you never are able to beat?
Yep.
And then a 1-0 win over the New Jersey Devils in that kind of fashion also.
Where you're only allowed 20 shots. It's not like your goalie had to make 40 or whatever. Right.
The team that quits, or the room that's lost, finishes the season on an 11-game losing streak with 3 more losses that were 9-3 in Montreal.
Yep.
Instead, what you got was Sam Ersson, like we said, playing 2 of the best games he's played in weeks, maybe even months. Travis Konechny scores in back. Travis Konechny's battling through he came back from an injury probably early just to try to get back so that they had one of their top guys back during the gauntlet.
Yeah.
So he's probably still battling through something. He scores in back-to-back. He scores in back-to-back games. Noah Cates is stepping up lately. Cam York and Travis Sanheim seem to have it's like the car that ran out of gas in the race and then finds a way to refire the engines just a little bit to continue.
Just to push across the line.
Going around the track one more time, right? They seem to have been able to refire the engines a little bit.
Yep.
So it all works. It's all worked itself out where it's like they've found a way to kind of stay in this thing. That 1-0 win isn't pretty. They don't score a ton of goals there. They play a typical Flyers Devils game. It's ugly. It's a bunch of neutral zone. It's a bunch of blocked shots. It's a bunch of tough, hard checking that leads to limited chances. But they win the game 1-0. That matters. And I think that them doing that at this time, when is it going to save your playoff hopes? It helps to potentially do that, but it may not completely. You may be too far gone, but at least it shows that you didn't quit on this thing, that you are going to try to finish it strong. And you like the fact that you could, even if you don't make it because not enough breaks for you, that you could finish the season on a 3-game winning streak after losing 8 in a row and including a handful that you did. It's going to suck. The part of it that's going to suck is that you'll probably end up knowing one game goes different. You make it.
We could have made it. Right.
I mean, let's put it this way. If they just so much as take care of business against, you can even throw the Montreal loss in. Maybe it's not 9-3, but you can even throw that second one in. They beat Chicago and they beat Columbus. They're in the playoffs.
Yep. Undoubtedly. Yep.
They probably clinch Saturday.
Or at very least clinch with like a Penguins loss or something.
Right. And to be honest, I was going into that because of everything that it was. The time of year it was, they were bringing in Wayne Simmons on a 1-day contract. And I just remembered, like, not now, but like when he announced his retirement, which was a couple weeks ago, right? It was like 3 weeks ago that they made the announcement this was going to happen. All I could think about was, I'm like, they're going to play on the final Saturday of the season with 2 games to go. And 8 years ago, Wayne Simmons scored 2 goals in the clinching game against the Penguins that got him into the playoffs. And Ed Snyder passed away 2 days later.
Oh, stop.
And it was like the fact that was going to be the Simmons night was like, this is lining up like perfectly. That's going to be clinch night with the way it was going. And instead it didn't turn out to be, but he went in. I don't know if you saw the video or not. He read the lineup.
I haven't seen that. No, I got to find that one. That's a good one.
Well, among saying other things, very much the player that he is and was and all that.
How much of that got kind of bleeped out on social media?
It was cut. There was a few, but it was cut. It's also really funny how he reads out the names and he reads out the first names of everybody who he didn't play with. And then
the hockey nickname of everyone he did play with.
And then throws in Sanny. Who else was in the lineup? It was Coots, so like, okay. and then it was like everybody else was with, like, it's Garnet Hathaway, it was Cam York, it was really Noah Cates and stuff like that, and he just goes full Samuel Erson between the pipes, like no Erse, no Sam, no nothing.
Would Cam York have been on the team?
Not Cam York was,
or was he like at training camp for Wayne Simmons last season?
Cam York was drafted in 19.
Oh, they would have missed. Okay,
so it was and it was 17 when he was traded. So. No, it was right after 19. So it was right after he got traded. It was the same.
Okay. To say he got traded at the Stadium Series 2019.
Right. So he played with Sanheim. He played with Konechny. He played with. I don't think he played at the time. Anyway, it was right before he would have signed. He didn't play with Joel Farabee either.
Okay.
So it was like there's that little portion of it he didn't get to play with. Okay. But he tells him at the end. He told him at the beginning and at the end. Leave it all out on the ice. Well,
and that was exactly the kind of player he was.
Right. And they tried to. And what's really interesting, by the way, so after he got traded, he eventually lands on New Jersey for a little while, right?
Yeah, he went straight to he went to Nashville first. He did spend a year in New Jersey and then went to Toronto.
A little bit of Toronto, right? He played with Nico Hischier, who's the captain there. So they do the puck drop, and it's 2 guys he's played with.
And that's cool. I love when teams do stuff.
Well, it's cool, but they had him mic'd up for that too. And he drops the puck and he gives Hischier a hug and he's like kind of like a good to see you hug or whatever. And then he goes over to Coots and he's like, go take care of this. like the guy on the other side he played with too. They're out of it, I guess. So it's like, go do it,
Well, my favorite quote from this week of Wayne Simmons.
Is it born to be a flyer?
I was gonna say 5 very simple words. Born to be a flyer. And my goodness, that is Wayne Simmons in a nutshell.
It was, and it was really cool that he was back around things. It sounds to me like that this is the start of something, by the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He went to Toronto to go play at home. His last couple of years, he signed the Claude Giroux contract, right? Go play at home, go show your kids what your hometown is, blah, 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 blah.
Well, he's very big on.
But then he retires as a Flyer.
But
Come on, Wayne, let's go.
But he's very big on showing his kids too. Like, this is where I grew up. And, this is where I was legitimate. Like, yeah, you know me as a Leaf for a little bit, but this is where I really.
They talked about it a little bit. They talked about it a little bit on the broadcast. Apparently, his middle daughter is a Leafs fan.
No, his oldest is.
His oldest daughter. I'm sorry.
He said his middle one. Okay. As soon as they had a jersey ready for her, she was like
pumped ready. We're done.
I'm putting this on. Then let's go.
Okay, so the older daughter is the oldest one. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen. How many more Leafs first round exits until
the behind the scenes, by the way, the Flyers put out with that features Danny and Jonesy being part that are on there too. You can just feel how much like that part. I said this earlier too, like that's the one thing I do take away is I know there were questions about Tortorella and the room and stuff like that through the last few games.
Speaking about guys Wayne Simmons played with, I mean,
you feel so solid about like the top of this thing right now, or you should at least until there's a reason not to. You should, because it just really feels like they've got a grasp on everything right now.
Well, and
their moves are still going to matter. Don't get me wrong. Like Danny Briere's got a lot of work to do, but
sure.
But at least you feel solidified about it.
And it feels like they're developing the modern version of the old Flyers front office,
right?
With Clark as GM and all these legends in the front office, but in a good way. Like they're still young. It's still fresh. Now, is there a chance that they cling on too long and in 30 years we're kind of having the same discussion? Sure, absolutely. But in the meantime, it's
only been a year though.
It's new. It's fresh. It's the new era of Orange. So
hopefully so. Yeah, I mean, and you'd love to see it end with the playoff appearance. And
I was about to say,
and it's still gonna. If they don't, it's still gonna be largely remembered for that. But I do think that maybe some of this. I don't want to say it takes the sting out of it, but I do hope that maybe there's enough answers to some questions that it's like.
I think
you focus in on doing what I talked about, though. Like you're still going to shed some dead weight, or what you feel like is dead weight where you can. You're maybe going to look to do something impactful. I think Danny's got feelers out, or is going to anyway. Don't you think? Like, don't you think he's going to now? This isn't going to be about like making the Provorov trade this time. It's going to be about how do we make a trade that gets us better and not just moves the line along.
I'm going to hit you with a big one here.
Oh boy.
I think he spends a lot of this summer talking to Russia.
He might. I don't know. We'll see.
Because if that kid comes over, okay.
I just don't think because here's the caveat I'm giving on what you just said though.
Of course,
that doesn't require anybody else. Russia obviously, but it doesn't require another. Like they have his rights from an NHL standpoint.
Yes.
So. If he comes over, he's coming over to play for them.
Free and clear, right?
I think that Briere is going to put out feelers with there's somebody out there that they're going to have their eyes on that he's going to have to negotiate with somebody about how do I make him a Flyer.
The Flyers could make a big deal this summer. It's very much a possibility.
And listen, I don't think it's like could you do that in free agency too? Sure. I don't think that's the way they're going to go. I think it's who's somebody who's under 25, maybe even 24 or under. Let's just put it that way. Who could be out there and I know the obvious answer, the obvious guy that you can think of is probably Trevor Zegras, or if not him, maybe it's Jacob Chikrin's older though, but
yeah, Chikrin's 26 at this point, isn't he?
Right, but you know what I mean. So Zegras is the obvious under 24 guy that you could sit there and say that about, but I just think that that's the type of trades that they're going to look into. We need more talent, we need more skill, we need somebody to step up. This is the type of guy we're going to look to trade for.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will see who steps up for the rest of the regular season. We'll see who steps up over the off season. Our next show will be dedicated to a playoff preview, whether the Flyers make it or not. Obviously, if the Flyers make it, it'll probably be a little more fun, but we will be back to preview the playoffs with our next show. In the meantime, follow us on social media at YWT Podcast. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Find us everywhere you find your podcasts, including sportstalkphilly.com. One quick little UFC thing before we get out of here. Oh my God, Max Holloway. Okay.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen the clip, go to the UFC's YouTube channel. Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje put on the War of the Year, and my Lord, it finished in style. I'll just leave it there. I'll let you go take a look. UFC 300 is absolutely incredible. Alex Pereira is a monster and wants to fight at heavyweight in 3 weeks. Oh my God, I'm so excited.
It was so exciting. It got Kyle back on Twitter.
It did. You know, if you're following us, at YWT Podcast, there were several UFC tweets last night. And you know what? I don't apologize, but I will try to be a little bit more active as the Flyers push for the playoffs here. So
yeah, you mean like if they score on this here or whatever, they're making it, and I didn't authorize this at all.
So make sure to follow us over there to see what unhinged stuff I'm saying. So in the meantime, we will be back at some point in the next week or so to talk about the playoffs. And until then, we'll see you.